Okay, everybody. It's getting around that time again. Sorry for being a couple minutes late, but uh, like I've said before in my previous streams, I have to kind of reset up the title and the tags um, for the stream, so people can kind of be aware of what this is all about, and it doesn't stay for based off of the scene they select. So I have to reset it each and every single time. I've got it on my mind that I need to get a document so that I can um, I know which ones that I want to kind of set up each time. So I'm getting that process in place so that I don't have to worry. I don't have to go searching for what I want to see. So um, I just have to kind of keep working on that particular portion there. So, okay, let's do that. There we go. Okay, let's go live here. And I can kind of show you what I've been kind of looking at right at the moment. So, I thought that I'd go ahead and download the next official release, just so if once I complete um, shooter tutorial, I'll just, move over to the next official release and be done with it. But then I get this. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. You know, description failed or bad record. Or decryption failed. Sorry. Yeah. Um, I, you know, so right now I'm running the 0.3.6 version. I click on the official releases, and I thought there was some additional releases after point 0.6, like a point 0.8 or whatnot, but I'm only seeing point 0.11 there. Did they like clean up their versions? I'm not sure. But I go to download, 3.11. I want to eventually build something for the Android, so I'm gonna, keep on with the Android build support. Windows build support, seeing that that's what I'm running on. Documentation always necessary. So I download this and give it a couple of minutes or so, and it will eventually go, oh, sorry, can't download this for some reason. Um, Maybe it was just a bad connection at the time. I don't really know. Seems to be doing fairly well right at the moment, but um, yeah, then I get that. So, I mean, I can't. There's no point in me trying to continuously try to click on this to download when it constantly fails on me. If you try to do that over and over and over again, that's basically a sign of you're insane. So it's one of those factors that they kind of call out. You know, uh, if you're doing something over and over and over again, expecting a different result and it just keeps on failing on you, then yeah. Okay, so not much I can really do about this right at this moment in time. I was kind of hoping that I could kind of use this new version to um, move on to other tutorials, but or redo the one that I was kind of working on a little bit to show whether or not I could actually cause some additional problems. But hey, you know, apparently I can't download the latest one. So yeah, okay, we're gonna go right into the survival shooter again. Uh, and we're going to go ahead and uh, start up the last portion of the tutorial, which was tutorial 10, or part 10, I should say, of the survival shooter um, tutorial set. Uh, if you guys have been kind of, if anyone has been kind of following my stream prior to now, you'll know that, hey, I've not had the greatest of luck with Unity. Um, I've sent the I've sent multiple emails to them stating that, hey, guys, I'm having some trouble trying to work with your software here, work with your IDE, and you know, um, I've also kind of shown them, hey, I'm having some problems with your tutorial stream. Uh, you know what? I'm gonna try this. I'm, uh, as you can see, the hub wasn't giving me any resolution on this, so let me try it this way and see whether or not I can download it through here. Um, so let me try to download the new version this way, see if it comes up at all. Okay, so it's sending me through it's sending me through their website. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bookmarks. Not that it really matters, it's already out on the internet anyway. Okay. I already downloaded the hub. It's not working through the hub. Let me try the download installer instead and see what happens. Ah, okay. Yep. Well, there you go. Unity. Uh, what's going on here, man? What is going on with your stuff? Because this is... I mean, this is supposed to be something that you should be testing out prior to making it live. Why am I getting this? Why am I getting this? Alright, well, apparently I can't download it. Okay, well, yeah. Okay, just to let folks know, okay, um, when you're dealing with a product that goes to, some other client or some other person or something along those lines, you always want to test that product out, right? Okay, here's another thing, okay? The aspect of when you're wanting to test to see whether or not you can actually access it, you test it first. You make sure that um, you have like a separate server, okay, that you kind of keep in your background, okay, that you can use to imitate what may happen when it's live. So um, so you can kind of bring up a browser, you click on the link, and it shows you what you're actually intending to see. Okay. The fact that um, I'm trying to go to the download and it's not even giving me that opportunity tells me that it feels like the folks over at Unity isn't doing that. Okay, they're uploading their files directly to their download center, I guess you might say. Okay, or to their site. They make the page for it and all that kind of stuff, and they put it live without testing it. Okay, and that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. Um, I, that's what I'm seeing right now. Okay, I could be completely wrong. Maybe they are testing it behind the scenes. I don't really know. I don't work there, so I don't know. Um, but um, based off of what I've been seeing with Unity a little bit here, okay, just based off of my interactions with them. Um, at one point in time when I clicked on these open reference for, or actually, you guys can't really see that. You know, open reference for Ridgebody. When I clicked on that one time, it didn't open up the documentation. It didn't go to a site. It didn't even go to anything contained on my particular hard drive for said documentation for this particular Ridgebody. And I'm like, it gave me a 404. I'm like, wait, what? Why are you giving me a 404 on this? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It's like you're not giving me what I need in order to actually progress on this. You know, as you can see here, they fixed that. Okay, so or at least it's taken its time to bring up the information on said documentation. But the fact that it's actually referencing um, the data on my hard drive for the documentation, I've already kind of gone over this. Okay, but the fact that I had actually had that at one point in time go to a 404, I'm like going, okay, what the hell? So, um, but that's my point. It's like the fact that it happens to a customer or someone that uses their product, kind of thing. This is stuff that should be tested. If they update portions of their IEE, they need to test those said portions. If they update to a new public version or official version that they put onto their website, they need to kind of test to make sure that that's correct. Um, you know, tip, you know, when I worked for Smart Software, at, sorry, when I worked for a software company at one point in time, we always had a little separate server that we always built uh, the software up for it, okay, and then we tested out whether or not it actually functioned the way we intended it to function, and then we would post it to their server so that it would go live and it would work on their website. And then, we made sure that it worked on their site as well. Okay, just to make sure that there wasn't any problems, the download didn't have any problems or whatnot. We always made sure that it worked on our end and it worked on their end. So, so just stuff that you guys should be aware of if you're watching this and you're trying to do tutorials, or you're trying to teach yourself how to go about this process. Remember to test. Test it through your own methods, upload it, and then test it there as well. So, just bear that in mind. Like for example, when it eventually gets to that point of me trying to do my own thing, I'm most likely going to be trying to do like maybe an Android kind of application. I'm going to try to test it here on the PC, using an emulator or whatever function that Unity might have, to test that out, if there is such a thing. I don't really know. I haven't gotten to that point yet. And then once I'm done, or once I think I'm to that point of completion, I'm going to move it over to like a marketplace, Google Play, whatever, what have you. And then I'm going to download it on my phone so I can test it there and see whether or not there's any kind of potential problems that I might see with it. So, it's that kind of step-by-step process of, building up an application and then testing it. I don't have a QA team. I don't have a programming team. So it's just going to be myself. So that's where it's going to be. All right. So with this, we're going to move on to the tutorial for the survival shooter. We're going to do the step 10. Let's see. Let me get it set up here. All right. Bring this over there. Step 10. Oh, it's muted. Unmute. Okay. Why am I not hearing anything? Maybe because I didn't actually set up my headset.
To fill my
there
screen.
We go. Let's try this again, shall we? Sorry about that,
Phase
folks.
number 10 of 10, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to create our game over state. We are able to shoot enemies. Enemies are able to attack us. But we currently want to show the player when the game has ended, apart from just having you kind of fall over. So we're going to do that by creating a bunch of other UI elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is to click on the 2D mode of the scene view. And then I'm going to double click my HUD canvas to frame selected as before. Remember that that is shortcut F. If you wanted to do that instead, you can click on any object and F to frame it. And I'm just zooming in to fill my screen.
Okay.
And I'm going to...
No, I missed something here. Get to a point where I can actually kind of do all this all at the same time, or at least try to. Alright, let's rewind it a little bit.
want to show the player when the game has ended, apart from just having you kind of fall over. So we're going to do that by creating a bunch of other UI elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is to click on the 2D mode of the scene view, and then I'm going to double click my HUD canvas to frame selected as before. Remember that that is shortcut F. If you wanted to do that instead, you can click on any object and F to frame it. And I'm just zooming in to fill my screen. And I'm going to right-click that HUD canvas and go to UI and Image. So we're going to create an image that stretches over the entire HUD canvas, the entire screen, and we're going to fade it out. So rename this from Image to Screen Fader. Screen Fader, capital S and F. Then in the Rect Transform Anchor presets, click the button, and we're going to Alt-click the lower right preset, which is stretch in both dimensions.
Okay.
That will stretch it over the entirety of the canvas, and currently, because it's white, it will just block everything out.
Okay.
Then what we're going to do is, in our image script, I'm going to click on the color block, and I'm going to pick a shade of light blue, something like this. So we're not going to pick a shade of black. We want to see our drop shadow on our score and our game over. I'm going to pick a light blue. Then we need to add our game over message. So yet again, reselect the HUD canvas.
Okay, hold on a second. My color didn't change. Oh, hello. Get back there. Color. Blue. Weird that I click on this and, you know, that should be blue, but it was still kind of showing me as white. Whatever. Okay. Let's go ahead and save it.
Right-click, UI, text. As before, it's going to create it right in the center of that. We're going to rename this Game Over Text. Capital G, O, and T. Then what we're going to do is make sure that it's centered perfectly. So we're going to Alt-click the center preset. It should be centered anyway, but we're just making sure. Then I'm going to change my width to 300 and a height of 50. Then we're going to write in an actual message in the text component. We're going to say game over. Then we're going to say the font is also our existing font, Luckiest Guy. So circle select to pick the font. And the font size, we're going to go with 50.
Okay.
The alignments are going to...
A little faster. Let me go ahead and... Okay. Ah, okay. I can... Right. There we go. 50. Alignment, center, probably center there too. Actually, it's not actually changing. I guess it's just so big that it doesn't even matter all that much for the alignment. You would think that there would be some small amount of difference between these three different alignments, but I'm not seeing anything. So yeah, okay. I'm just gonna keep it in the center just so if there is a portion of time where it does, change or something like that, or if the graphic does kind of get moved around or something along those lines, that it'll always have that center alignment. So
Going to be center and middle under paragraph. And I'm going to scroll down and choose white from the color picker, just like before.
okay.
And
Oh. Okay. There we go. It wasn't giving me the option for a pure white on that one, so or at least I was having some difficulty trying to move the indicator here to a full white, so I just used the hexadecimal value for it. So there you go.
And as before, we need a drop shadow, so we're going to add component. So I'm going to type in SHA, press return to add the shadow script. Yet again, I'm going to put in 2 and -2 just to accentuate the effect a little bit. Then, very importantly, we need to reorder how these are arranged. So this is a really important thing to learn about the new UI system. So what you may have noticed as of Unity 4.5 and now in Unity 4.6, the hierarchy doesn't show in A to Z order. You'll notice that things that are at H is below a Z. So the reason for that is that the UI system needs to use the hierarchy to order its render order. The way that this works, if you're used to Photoshop, you have to kind of think backwards. The lowermost child object is rendered in front of everything else. So currently we have damage image at the bottom, followed by health UI rendered on top of that, followed by score text, screen fader, then game over text. However, we don't want it in that order. We want our health UI to be at the bottom so that when we fade in this blue screen, it obscures or renders in front of that health UI. You don't need to know that you had no health left when you died because that's pretty obvious. That's why you died. So we're going to drag and drop these to reorder. You need to be kind of careful with this and just watch me do it first because it can be a bit clunky. So what I want you to do is just watch for a second. So what I'm going to do is move my health UI to above. So I don't want to accidentally drop onto something else like this. I want to drop it so that it has the line and the small circle and drop it above. And I'll slowly get these into the right order. So with the screen fader, that needs to be the third thing. So I'm going to drag that between these two so the line shows up. And then game over text and score text should be at the end. So the health UI will render first and the damage image is next. That's intermittently happening, so it doesn't matter too much. The screen fader needs to obscure both of those by fading in, and we'll finish the game with game over text and score text still showing on top of that blue screen. So we've sorted that render order. Just to remind you of the render order, this is what it is. Health UI first, then damage image, screen fader, game over text, going down the list so that the render order ends with score text. So the screen fader in the hierarchy, by default, needs to be transparent. We don't want to start the game with this blue obscuring everything. So I'm just going to save my scene real quick. And then with my screen fader reselected in the hierarchy, I'm going to click on the color block. And you'll see sliders at the bottom, RGB, red, green, blue, and A for alpha. So that's how you do transparent things. In Unity, you drag the alpha to 0.
Okay,
Then,
hold on here. Ah, God damn it. Yeah, see how this is kind of um, how this kind of starts slightly high? I don't understand why um, you know, why it's so high when I tried to vertically set it, but whatever. Okay. I am hoping I'm doing this
the
right.
same thing for the game over text. Select game over text. And in the color for the text component, open the block, set the alpha to 0. Drag the slider down to 0. So at the start of the game, these aren't there. And we're going to use animation in just a second to animate those in, make them look cool, and we're going to create a state machine for when the game ends. Because we previously used pre-animated FBX files, they came with an animator component already attached to them. We just needed to create the controller, the state machine, to apply to it. But you can use the animator with anything. A lot of people get confused because when we added the new animation system, it has a nickname which is Mechanim. And a lot of people think that that is only usable for character animation. It's not true at all. You can animate anything you want to. It's just a state machine you can apply animation clips to. So we're going to do exactly that with our UI right now.
Even the term animation is a little bit misleading because it makes you think that some form of motion is involved. And in fact, animation in this case can literally be the changing of anything. Positional information such as movement, but also colors, alphas, values, turning
Lights,
things on and
yeah.
off, literally anything you want.
So you can animate any public property of any component on any game object in Unity. So we're going to do that with the UI right now to give you an example of that. Because when we start adding animation, Unity is going to automatically assign the animator, i.e. the holder for the state machine, we need to select the right object. So we're going to choose the HUD canvas as the one we're going to start adding animation to. That way, when we add one clip, we'll be able to address any property of any of the child objects. That's really important. So with the HUD canvas selected, I want you to go to Window, Animation. Window Animation, not the animator, the actual timeline. It should look like this, and I'm going to drag this tab and dock it by the game view. Because when you're animating, you're mostly going to look at the scene view and you don't really need to worry about the game view, so I'm going to dock that in the same place.
Okay.
Then, if I don't already have a clip made, as soon as I add a curve, so adding curve basically means add a property that I want to animate of anything that's attached to the game object currently selected. So I click Add Curve, and Unity's like, whoa, you don't have an animation yet. So it pops up a Create New Animation box. Because we've made that animation folder before we started, I'm going to select that as the place to put it. And I'm going to name my new clip Game Over Clip, like that. Press Save. So now, you'll see.
Okay, once again, we're having to face change in the change in the IDE. So as you can see here, there is, you know, a difference obviously between what I have here and what they have there. So I went ahead and I did the create an animator because it sounds like that's what they're trying to lead towards on this. But once again, slight difference. Hopefully everybody can kind of understand, you know, there's no curve. You have to actually create the animator first before you go on. So let me kind of rewind a little bit to get there. To get the file name correct. So
it pops up a create new animation box. Because we've made that animation folder before we started, I'm going to select that as the place to put it. And I'm going to name my new clip Game Over Clip, like that.
okay. All right. Once again, I'm hoping that I'm doing this correct. We'll see.
Press Save. So now you'll see that the animation window is in record mode. The record mode button is highlighted, and it's asking us which property we'd like to animate.
It's worth noting right now that it is in fact in record mode, so anything you do in the scene view or the inspector is going to get recorded. And you need to be careful exactly the things that you touch. And a real quick, easy way, too, to know if you're in record mode is you see the play icons at the top are red. That means you are in record mode.
Okay. Right at this moment in time, that is not the case for this. I don't know when they might have changed it, but the fact that this is not showing and there is no red up there, I'm going to have to assume, based off of what I'm going off of here, that that is not the case. I am not currently in record mode. I don't know whether or not I need to be in record mode. It would seem like I probably should be in record mode, but I don't really know right at this point in time. So I'm going to wait to see what they say about which property to add first before I, seeing that I have this add property, but I don't know the steps that they might need to take with that. So I'm going to hold off for now, find which property that they want to add, and I'll see about trying to go from there. I'm going off on my own on this one because, yeah, like I said, different versions.
Yeah.
Which means anything you're doing right now is being recorded. If you change stuff, it's going to think you intended for that to be part of the animation.
There's a couple of different ways to work with this window. We're going to work in a very specific way, but there's a more kind of freestyle way where you can move the playhead along, change your property, and then it's going to get recorded straight into your animation. We'll do a little bit of that, and we'll do a little bit of filling it in manually. Like I said, adding curve is choosing a property that you want to animate. So the list here shows me, first of all, the components attached to the game object we're animating. So there's a rect transform, there's a canvas, there's the graphic raycaster, the canvas group, and now it's added also an animator component because we're going to drive this with a state machine. Unity knows that's the way it needs to work, so it's added it for us. It also, very helpfully, created an animator controller asset for it and assigned it for us as well.
Okay.
So now we also get the child objects. So all of these things that are attached to HUD Canvas are also animatable. So what we're going to do is add a number of properties that we want to animate. So the first one we want to animate is the game over text. We want to make that fade in. So if you expand game over text and then expand the text component and click the plus icon for color. So you can see color here. Click the plus icon and you will get some keyframes added in at 0 and at 1 second. And you also get the properties of that particular thing. Okay. So next.
Okay. First off, it's looking like Um, even though, you know, I added the animator in there, and the fact that it did not start the animation aspect of the whole, you know, red buttons and all that kind of stuff on there, it, based off of what they're talking about here, it's looking like I'm going to need to make sure that I have that active, enable the keyframe recording mode right now, so that I have those, I have it available. It starts it off right away. So go ahead and record that, add property, and he was saying add in the game over text color. Bam. All right. So I have that in. They have the different colors there: red, green, blue, and the transparency. So we move on.
Next, I'm going to add another curve. I'm going to, this time, go to Game Over Text, Rect Transform, and Scale. Add a property for that. Then, Screen Fader, Image, Color. So these are all things that we want to animate. Remember, we're animating in the alpha of the screen fader. We're going to animate the fading in of the word Game Over on the text. And we're also going to scale it. We're going to make it bounce when it comes in. So we're going to use Scale for that.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of add in a little, maybe something that they can probably kind of use is when I look at this, when there's like multiple, like this one here, it'd be kind of nice, at least for me, if I knew which plus was definitive for the value here kind of aspect. Like maybe put these in like a little table kind of a situation with a border or something along those lines, because having it be free form like this without any kind of indication as to you know, which plus symbol goes to which one can be kind of hit and miss. That's just my kind of personal take on it. You know, I kind of wish that that was a thing. I don't know whether or not I might be able to kind of do that, or whether or not that's a possibility. I don't really know. So yeah, continuing on.
Finally, score text, we're just going to shrink down a little bit when the game is over. So we're going to add one more curve, score text, rect transform, scale. And the last thing I'm going to do is to select the topmost keyframe of the end keyframes. So what you can see is there's an empty row in your list of curves. Now what that does is it allows you to grab all of them that are in line. So I can click on my top keyframe here. I can drag this back to frame 30 and let go. That will shorten the entire animation. So I'm grabbing this top one, and that's pulling all of the end keyframes for my animation to frame 30. So now we're going to actually start animating. So when you move your mouse...
Okay. Is there an easier way that I can actually kind of drag this? Because it's currently at 31. There we go. Wonder, is there... I don't want to have to kind of, you know, he specifically tried to get it directly on 30, and as you know, it kind of showed, I had a little difficulty trying to make sure that it's exactly on 30. But it doesn't look like there's any way for me to kind of set the number, you know, on here per se, on this. like, some kind of box over here that I can just basically say, okay, for this one I want it um, on timestamp 30. I want this one on timestamp 25. That kind of aspect. I don't really see anything here for that. I'm hoping that will be the case at some point, or maybe they have a 30 up there. Could this be it? But okay. Let's see. Can I change this? No, this is just a playment of the, or the playment. I can speak. This is just a timestamp of where you can do the preview of it. I don't know if there's any kind of box that I can kind of use to change these at all. Kind of wish that there was. But moving on.
Mouse over this actual timeline here where I'm moving my mouse now, you can drag around and you'll see the red line, that's the playhead, moving around. I'm going to move to frame 20. You can see here that the number that you're currently on is represented. So if I want to move to frame 20, I can drag or I can type in here frame 20. And then I want to create a keyframe for the game over text scale. So I'm going to drag this divider so that I can see the end of that property. So the line between the list of curves and the timeline itself can be dragged to expand it. Game over text rect transform scale is the first one. I select the property so it's highlighted in blue, and I press K to make a new keyframe, or I can use this button here to add a keyframe as well.
You can also just double click in that row.
Okay, so once I've done that, I can move to frame 0 and expand this. And what you'll see is that I've got 1, 1, 1. So when we start off, the scale is all at 1. But we want it to kind of increase from 0 scale and bounce up and then shrink back down. So drag the playhead back to 0. Then I'm going to enter in 0, 0, 0 in the scale property. So if you expand game over text rect transform scale, you can click in those boxes and type in 0 and hit return. So what you'll notice if you then drag the playhead is that that rect transform is increasing. We haven't animated the alpha yet, but you can see the rect of the box is popping up as I drag over those.
Okay.
What I want you to notice as well is that we can also address this using the inspector. So the game over text rect transform scale, with that selected, I could also use the inspector. When we're in record mode, anything that's set up for animation, anything we've added as a curve in the list, is highlighted in red. So you can see that change as I drag in the inspector. The next thing we're going to do is go to that frame 20 where we've added that new keyframe. And because we're in record mode, I can go to the inspector and type 1.2 for all axes. 1.2 for the scale of all of those. So where it's red and says 1, replace that with 1.2. So what that's doing, if I drag now, is it's popping up and then bouncing back down. So at frame 20, it's a scale of 1.2, and then we know that it's a scale of 1 at the end. So move the playhead to frame 20, set the scale to 1.2, and then you should see that it's popping up. Then, to finish this off, we're moving our playhead to frame 30. Again, Please make
Okay, hold on a second. I want to try to make sure that this is correct here. Bounce and then back. There we go. Okay.
Make sure that you're on that frame. So frame 30 is represented in this box. And then we need to just set a couple of other properties. So game over text, text color, we need the alpha to be 1. So I can expand that and set the alpha to 1. So I know that it's going to increase and become fully visible by frame 30. Then I'm going to close it back down. And with the screen fader, I want that to fade up to 1 as well. So I'm going to set the color.a property to 1, so the color alpha to 1. So as soon as I do it, I can see that the blue appears, so that's correct. And finally, score text at the end should be a scale of 0.8. So I'm going to set those in 0.8. So basically, we're just shrinking that down so it makes game over more prominent. We don't want them to be the same size, so we just scale one down as the game over text bounces up. If you've done those correctly, as you scrub over, it should be doing something like this. Score text is going down, the blue is fading up, game over is bouncing in and becoming more visible, whilst Health UI is hiding or disappearing behind the screen fader. Okay, so what we should have is our clip. And what you'll notice is that if we press play in the animation view, it's constantly looping. We don't want that to happen. But before we address that, what we're going to do is to move all of our keyframes to further on in the timeline, because we don't want this to happen as soon as the player dies, because we won't get to see the player death animation or the enemies changing to idle or anything like that. So you can zoom in the animation view. Use that if this next part proves difficult. You can use the scroll wheel. If you're on a Mac, you can use the 2-finger zoom. But what I'm going to do, just watch for a second, is to drag a box over all of my keyframes.
Okay. I wanted to pause right here because the score text isn't showing right at this moment in time, and I think that was because of the fact that I had gone ahead and changed the I had the code actually put in the text itself. So so let's see. Let me try to see whether or not see score manager. Let's try to see about whether or not I need to kind of change that back or something like that. You know, 2 weeks ago when I was actually putting all this stuff in, I was talking about how, you know, what's the point of actually, you know, putting the text into the text box when you can just have when you're already having the code kind of do that for you. So I'm now seeing why they did it that way, so you can kind of see it, see what happens to it in the UI itself. So I don't think they really addressed that per se when they were first talking about it. I kind of wish that they did, because now I'm having to kind of go back and kind of change that back to it. Now what you could do is you can do the you can do adding the text into the text box, changing your code so that you could do a quick swap in and out of the data, like right then and there. You know, just comment out the the old code so that you can just use the one that you kind of prefer afterwards. You could do it that way if you want. I mean, it's a slight addition to your code, so I mean, but yeah, you know, I have this kind of already set up to kind of handle the whole score aspect of it, you know, because I was like, oh, well, what's, you know, the update's already kind of doing the work for you, so what's the point of, um, hmm, oh no. Well, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a pretty nasty problem. Um, yeah, I don't have a license to Visual Studio. And I kind of doubt that I can actually afford a license to Visual Studio. Let me double check that. So if I want a license for Visual Studio so that Unity can keep on using it, I have to basically pay $11 for it. Okay, well, I can't do that just right at the moment. I have to kind of wait on this. I don't know if there's another way for me to kind of bring up another scripting application other than Visual Studio. Um, I'm gonna hope that I can. Otherwise, I'm gonna be in trouble here. So, I don't know where the scripts are stored, so that I can maybe use Notepad++ to do it there, maybe. So yeah, fun times are at the moment, right? The whole adage of you gotta spend money to make money is getting a little bit more prevalent nowadays. Well, it's always been kind of the case, but still. Um, I'm hoping that I can maybe find a way to access this some other version. Let's see. You know what? Hold on here. Let me. Unity. Um, Scripting tool. Oh, that's another facepalm. This section covers the tools within the Unity editor and tools supplied with Unity that assist you in developing your scripts. That's great. What are they? Ah, there they are. Okay. Okay, when the code editor is installed. Okay, so let's see about trying to change this into something that I can kind of use a little bit more. So, none of those options are available. Okay, maybe build settings? No. Sorry there, folks. I need to kind of fix this up a little bit to see whether or not I can actually kind of get what I need. Maybe that one? External tools. Okay, script editor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do I'm going to see about trying to find the nice C Notepad++. Okay. They okay, this is kind of concerning. There is more to the score manager script than before. Okay, let's go back to preferences real quick. Let's switch this back to the 2017. What am I seeing here? What the heck is changing? I can see something going on right here, so that's why I'm kind of confused as to what's happening. Hmm. I guess nothing is happening. Okay, well, I'm hoping that this is going to be okay. I don't really have any other options, especially if they go into some more coding, so um, which I'm sure that they will.
Then drag all of them so that the first keyframe is on 1 second, 30 frames, or 90 frames in total. So move it like that. That way, it's going to start playing, you'll see the other animations in the game, and then this game over sequence is going to pop in. And finally, disable record mode. So switch off that record button. Like I said, animation clips will loop. So the default in Unity is for looping animation. With something like this, you don't want it to loop. And the way that you address that is a little bit hidden away. It's not ideal, but it's attached to the clip. So we don't want this to loop, so what I'd like you to do is to go to the animation folder in the assets and select the game over clip that we just made. So that clip that we just made, the default at the top there is loop time. Uncheck loop time at the top of the inspector. Then reselect the HUD canvas, and you'll notice that Unity's added, like I mentioned before, the animator component, and it's created a HUD canvas animator controller. It names it after the game object that you started animating, basically. That's why it's the same name. So I can double-click that asset to open it in the animator window, the state machine. And that's exactly what we need to do. So double-click HUD canvas, the animator controller, not the game object, to open it in the animator window. So by default, it puts it in as a new state, and it puts that clip into that state as the default one to play, and it's just going to loop it. We've stopped it looping by unchecking loop time on the clip, but we also don't want it to play straight away. So we're going to right-click, create state, empty. So we'll have a new gray state. This state doesn't have any animation clip assigned to it, so it effectively does nothing at all. Here's the problem that we're solving. As soon as I press play, it's game over. You want people to have a bit more of a game-based experience. So what we're going to do is to solve that by stopping this being played by the animator straight away. We've made a new empty state, and we don't have any motion. So usually when you see a state, it has an animation clip in the motion field. We don't want that there. If we really wanted to, we can rename it empty, but we don't need to at all. But we do want that to be the default. So we're going to right-click on our new state or our empty state and choose Set as Default. Then we're going to create a transition, make transition to Game Over Clip state. And we're going to select that transition, and you'll see that there's a condition called exit time, but we don't want that. We want to have...
I'm just trying to get the view to try to show this a little bit more, but it's not giving me the way to kind of move the values around, so I guess I'm gonna have to kind of do it manually. I was kind of hoping that I could kind of just, you know, say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and you know, I could just kind of move this over somehow, some way, but all my left clicking and dragging and all that kind of stuff isn't really doing anything. So I don't know if there's something that I'm missing, maybe. Okay, well, whatever. Okay, so God damn it. Trying to handle all this all at once here. Okay, so we're gonna make this Uh, see, change this to empty, he said. Set as default state. A transition to the game over clip. And then probably remove. Can I not? I can't delete that. I don't know. Okay.
An actual trigger to make this happen. In our parameters, we're going to create a new trigger, and we're going to name this parameter game over, capital G and O. Remember, parameters are being addressed by a script, so it's very important that you get that naming correct. Capital G, capital O. We need to then set this condition, so make sure you've got your transition highlighted in blue, like this, and set the condition to game over. So as soon as that trigger is called from a script, it will fire us into that state. Then finally, we're going to select our HUD canvas in the hierarchy, and we're going to go to this scripts managers folder, and we're going to drag and drop game over manager onto HUD canvas.
Okay,
So
hold
in
on a
script
second. I'm still trying to figure out if there's any way to change this at all. I mean, it gives me this entry, exit, and any state every single time, and it's like, okay, well, I can't really do anything with this. Can't really seem to. I can't seem to remove this particular transition, so, or at least it doesn't look like I can, so I don't know. Maybe it's always that way, that entry goes into the empty, so that that's basically the default state of it. So let's go back real quick because they were mentioning some additional information here,
parameters,
so.
we're going to create a new trigger, and we're going to name this parameter game over, capital G and O. Remember, parameters are being addressed by a script, so it's very important that you get that naming correct. Capital G, capital O. We need to then set this condition, so make sure you've got your transition highlighted in blue, like this, and set the condition to game over. So as soon as that trigger is called from a script, it will fire us into that state. Then finally, we're going to select our HUD canvas in the hierarchy, and we're going to go to this scripts managers folder, and we're going to drag and drop game over manager onto HUD canvas. So in scripts managers folder in the project, find game over manager, drop it onto HUD canvas. Then we're going to double click this to open it up.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me make sure that I get this all taken care of here. Game over manager, okay.
Okay, so as always, we're going to start with our public variables at the top of the script. We first need a reference to the player's health. So obviously the game ends when the players run out of.
Okay, game over manager that I'm seeing right now is different than what they have here. So I'm gonna have to add in my additional, add in the code that is missing. I don't know whether or not this is intentional or not, but once again, we're talking about um, uh, we're talking about the different versions again. So
of health, we need to know when that is. Next, we have a public float, which is the restart delay. So that's how long it's going to take once the player's died before we restart. Next, we have our private variables. We've got an animator reference, obviously, because we need to set the animator's trigger parameter, and a timer for that restart delay. So in our awake function, we're going to set up the reference as we have done before using getComponent. And then in update, we're going to check if the player has run out of health, if he's got...
okay, let's go ahead and add in this additional, oh, that's timer. Okay. Just so you're aware, I know that I'm probably going to have some difficulty using C# script without some kind of debugger tool. So when I start working on my own individual, I'm probably going to need to either find a resource using Notepad++, or maybe I'll have to purchase the license for 2017, I guess. I don't really have the cash for it right at the moment, but I mean, I'll have to do what I can. So, but at the same time, this has been tested on their side. I'm just kind of copying what they have, so it should work perfectly under their, you know, on their back end of the IDE. So it should have a compiler and whatnot on their IDE that handles this, so I won't have to worry about it. At least I hope it should. So now, when it gets to the point where I'm probably going to need to modify my own kind of code, that's where I'll need to find a a compiler or something like that. Something that can kind of show me what might be a problem. But Visual Studio tends to be the better tool out of it all, because it will actually kind of show the classes, the variables, all that kind of stuff to you. So right now I'm just using Notepad++ as an offset for now. We'll see what we can do in the future. So
less than or equal to 0 health. So if he has, he's dead. So we're going to set the animator trigger parameter to game over. We're going to set that, and it'll trigger that animation. We're then going to start the restart timer. So we're going to start counting up that timer. Once that exceeds the restart delay, so when the restart timer is increased enough that it is greater than 5 seconds, then we're going to call application.loadLevel. So that's just going to reload the scene because we've passed in the loaded level.
So usually you can write in a string, so you might say level 01, and you add it to the build settings. But you can also, if you're reloading the exact same scene, you can use this little shortcut called loaded level, which is the one that's currently already there. So it's a very simple script, just a way to count up to a particular point if you've run out of health, whilst also triggering the animation of game over to appear on the screen.
Okay, here's what I'm kind of wondering about right at this moment in time. We already have something checking on update whether or not a player's health is already at 0, if I remember correctly. I mean, it's been 2 weeks, so I mean, but I thought there was something that did that already. There it is. Okay, so um, this is where the possibility of booleans come into play here. So, like for example, here you have the private is dead kind of aspect. Instead of having to check on the player health, you can check to see whether or not there is dead. You can do the whole get is dead as a boolean. And to be honest, you don't even need to set this here. You can actually put that in here. Like here, let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Take that, move it there. So that the trigger is going to happen, and and the update here is going to check to see whether or not it's if it needs to restart the timer or not. Unless of course, the game over manager is controlling the animation trigger for game over. I don't really know. I mean, let me check this here real quick. Yeah, the game over script is down there. But I don't see Oh no. Okay. Yeah, the this one actually has the trigger for game over. So I have a funny feeling, I could be completely wrong here, that if I include the set trigger game over here within the player health, which is technically on the player, it's not going to understand it. It's going to see the whole game over and go, I don't know what trigger you're referencing, kind of aspect. Um, so that could actually be a thing. So let's go ahead and move it back here. I don't know whether it might be a thing or not. You know, I don't necessarily want to take the chance on it, um, because I mean I've already kind of messed with this IDE a couple times already. Um, so yeah. Um, don't like that extra space there. So yeah. Um, but it's one, you know, once again, it's the whole, you know, do you want to have the current health being available to be modified by other public classes, or do you want to have the encapsulation of whether or not it's you have the is dead or damaged kind of aspect, which is private. You know, it's that kind of game design. Uh, you know, what do you want to have being visible to other classes? Okay, because um, anything that you leave public could be used by something else. So, for example, if someone was able to put in some unknown, uh, if someone is able to kind of throw in another file into your download page, kind of thing, encapsulated within the application or something along those lines, they could basically use the public variables for their own purpose. So that's why it's like, you have to kind of be careful with the whole encapsulation aspect. You know, do you want to allow current health to be public, or do you want to use like a get or set function, you know, and just use booleans? So, um, you know, that's a topic for another time, kind of thing. You know, it all depends on how you want to kind of uh, code up your application. If you're comfortable with having current health being public to be used, then that's, you know, I've kind of already debated that, you know, in previous versions. Um Again, I don't know whether or not the set triggers, if I can kind of get away with, you know, sending this set trigger over to player health, seeing that this is all kind of contained under death. You know, game over should, you know, uh, the trigger for game over could be thrown under the death because it's kind of the same process. But um, the HUD canvas being the way it is, with its own trigger for game over, it might need it there. That's so I don't know Unity well enough to determine whether or not that's uh, if that's a thing, if that's a requirement. You know, if I set up one trigger under one portion of the hierarchy, can it be seen by another um, portion of the hierarchy? the script for player, player's health is under player. Can it access the trigger for HUD canvas? I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. If it is, then I say great. Move the game manager game over trigger over to player health death. Because what's the point of having to check the health every single time? You do it in one particular location, right here, and that's it. You don't need to worry about it anymore. But yeah. Okay. So let's continue on here.
Going back to Unity, we are very finally going to select our HUD canvas, and you'll notice that the Game Over Manager needs to know about player health. So we need to assign the player to that public property, player health. So with my HUD canvas selected, I'm going to drag the player, drop it onto player health, so that it's got a reference to that. It can find out our health and therefore when we have died. Select the background music and do play on awake. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, save your scene.
Okay, wait a minute. What am I? Background music. Play on awake. Okay. Okay.
Pat yourselves on the back and press play to shoot some zombie toys.
Okay. Let's try this out. Killed off those guys. Ooh. There you go. Let's see if I can. Yep. Oh. Look at the hierarchy there. The number of clones. I'm going to assume that, showing off everything that is being created, all the amount of spawns and whatnot, so, okay. So, time to die. There we go. And reset. I'm going to kind of do it into full screen here. Maximize and play. Game. There we go. So you guys can kind of see what's going on. Now, once again, the animation for the walking isn't great, but they never addressed that in the tutorial set, so I believe that's something that you can probably modify in the animator aspect, that stop if this the whole aspect of, hey, it stop this particular animation if the other one is if this particular animation set is active, stop the other one. I don't really know, so. Alright. I can stop that. Okay, and let's see.
Probably sound like this.
See, their animation is really
I'm
clean.
going to turn that down so it's not quite so offensive.
Oh, they cut off the sound at the very end there. Okay, so let's see, was there any kind of comments? Okay, so I'm looking at the comments here, and based off of what is done here, they're saying that it's been deprecated in Unity 5, but mine just worked. If it's been deprecated, then why is it still being used? That this shouldn't be a thing. Unless something else is going on. Maybe they added it back. If it's been deprecated on a more recent version, then why? Okay. First off, actually, did I? Let's see. Okay, so yeah, the whole load level aspect wasn't even in the original version of this. So so in a sense, they gave us an updated version of it. Maybe it's not even using that in this case. And if that is the case, then once again we're faced with the whole they're giving us an old video without any kind of updated. So could this be not necessary anymore? Is it already doing it? This person is saying, use the scene manager.load scene and all that kind of aspect. Maybe it's maybe all this is being handled in the background already. Oh man, this is causing more questions than leaving me with a broad, this is giving me more questions about your IDE than it's answering in some fashion or another. Um, um, so yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of once again state they need to redo their tutorials. Use the most recent version, redo your tutorials, and um, fix all the ones that I mean, these tutorials are good. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate that they're there. Problem is that they're you know they're 5 years old now. Well, 5.5 years old now. Or no, 4.5. Yeah, 4.5. By this point, and there's been multiple different changes on it, and it's like, well, it's some of the aspects haven't changed, and therefore you can kind of um, get away with not having to worry about said changes. Um, there's some aspects that are missing, and there's some aspects that um, they don't reference whatsoever because it was never a concept. It was never created, 4.5 years ago. So, um, yeah. So this is kind of unfortunate in the sense that um, I'm at this point in the survival shooter tutorial. I'm seeing comments about different kind of editing problems with the script, blah blah blah, um, and uh, it's leaving me with a few more questions. Um, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close these out because the tutorial's done. I was able to kind of get everything that I wanted to do, get everything done. Or at least what they presented to me. If I was to kind of keep on moving with this, uh, you could like try to maybe add some more animations. Maybe you can add some more different guns, different types of. You can add in multiple levels. Um, I don't know how they might go about doing that with this. Like, you know, how do you construct another level on the hierarchy? Um, because the you know the everything on a particular level is going to be fairly the same. I mean, unless you're changing the environment, the lighting, the background music. There's various aspects that you can change on a level, based off of what you want to do. Maybe you only want to have bunnies on level 1. Maybe you only want to have bears on the next level or something along those lines. You can make those kind of changes, but they didn't really address that in the tutorial. They didn't really say, hey, here's how you would make level 2 if you were wanted to do level 2, that kind of aspect. Um, so I don't know how that kind of happens, but uh, nor do I know the transition between how you would handle like a level 1 to level 2 kind of aspect. Um, Obviously, I'm going to assume, hey, I'm going to have uh, level 1 have like 50 bunnies, and then once you kill all 50 of them, it moves on to level 2 or something along those lines. Um, but this doesn't really show you how to do that kind of transition, you know. Um, I mean, this is great as small little standalone as a tutorial kind of aspect, but this doesn't show how you might be able to kind of handle like multiple different levels. I'm hoping that the other tutorials might show me that, but um, this is what we're going to do now. Um, in previous streams, I had an issue with the camera. I think it was step 3 of it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to um, go back to the hub, close this out, go back to the hub, delete this survival shooter because I don't really need it anymore. I kind of seen um, how they're kind of able to do some things. But once again, I still have questions. I'm hoping the other tutorials might be able to kind of answer them, but we'll see. Um, I may need to kind of look some of this stuff up online, whether or not uh, one um, one asset can access another trigger, from another asset kind of aspect. I don't really know. Um, so maybe that's something that I can kind of play with, at a later date. Maybe it's going to be referenced in the other tutorial video. I'm not sure. We'll go from there. So let's go ahead and stop. Go ahead and close this out. Um, Closing out Unity just basically closed out everything there. So let's see. Mm, here's what I here's what's kind of irritating about the whole hub thing. There's no way to actually delete anything from it. Once you install something, it's installed. You can't do anything more with it. I can't delete this particular version anymore. You would think that would be under the 3 bullet point here, but it doesn't give you that option. Okay, well, I gotta see about trying to delete this. So, give me 1 second there, folks. All right. Sorry, folks. I saw a subfolder here called Mono Develop, and it's like, why is that there? Okay, well, I deleted it from Unity tutorials, so it should be gone. Yep, there's that. Learn, tutorial projects, survival shooter. Oh. It's showing me start. And did I miss something here? Is it like maybe under a different... Why is there multiple different hubs? Oh, no, don't do that. Yeah, let me show you guys what I'm kind of talking about here a little bit. So... why? This one was just created today. Why is this a thing? Why is this a thing? You guys are creating multiple different folders on my hard drive here and taking up space. None of this... well, some of these files have been updated. What the hell is going on here? Okay, so this one was kind of updated just recently, kind of aspect. Nothing here, though. And this was kind of used a little bit here. Oh, this is probably what was going on there. Okay, so this is what's going to happen now. I'm going to go back to the very first tutorial here and recreate everything from step 1 to step 3. And I'm going to see if I can actually break the camera again. At least that's the intention. So it's
You
gonna
run
be
around, you shoot these kind of zombie teddies.
it's gonna be a little bit of a fast-paced kind of process because I've already kind of done this a little bit. So so I don't necessarily need to have the sound on all that much. Let me go ahead and move this over here a little bit. Default, oh no, I want the theater mode there. Okay, well, maybe I do want to mute.
I want you to make a brand new scene. So first of all, we're going to go to File, New Scene. Then what we want you guys to do, to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, we're going to ask you to set up the editor in the same style that we have. If you're comfortable with Unity, you've used Unity before, and you prefer to work in your layout of the editor, that's totally cool. You can keep that. But if you're new to Unity, what we'd like you to do is to choose the Layout menu in the upper right, and choose 2 by 3. So Layout, drop down in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. That will get you a style that looks something like this. Then what we'd like you to do is to drag the project panel and drop it below the hierarchy. You'll note when you drag the title tabs of the panels around, they will dock into different spaces. Drop that below the hierarchy, and then you can just drag up the division between those two. Maybe drag this over a little, and then you should be all set. So hopefully everyone's got a view like that. Then what I usually like to do is with the project panel, because we don't really need to use the thumbnails particularly, there's a slider at the bottom which will change to list view when dragged all the way over to the left. So if we drag it over to the left, you're going to see exactly the same as what I have on my screen here. We are working with Unity 4.6, but right now what we'd like you to do is to go to File, Save Scene As, and we will ask you to put this into the Scenes folder. So we don't want you to use the completed assets version of anything. Just use the Scenes folder that's in the root of the project. And we're going to call this Level 01.
Okay. What the heck is this? Yeah, I would fear that that the hub would save all the assets and whatnot into like a Unity projects kind of save file kind of deal. It's not doing that here. I don't know. Oh wait, wait. Save as. Okay, yeah. I need to actually create a new folder called Scenes. Maybe I can move that up in there. Sure. Nope, that didn't work either. Because, hello. You're not under scenes. Even though it's here. You know what? I'm gonna stop this. I'm going to go ahead and completely delete all that because once again, yeah, I kind of messed up on the whole beginning aspect. Not my intention to go about trying to okay. Let's go ahead and try to make sure that everything's kind of cleaned up a little bit here. Let's see. Okay. Pardon me while I clean up the mess that was. Try to see where I can find. Okay, nothing there. Nothing there. Data, roaming. Nothing there. I think I've cleaned up everything. All right. Yeah, I think I cleaned up everything. So I'm gonna restart up. It's kind of both their hard badassery, badass, hard bad, whatever. I'm going through the tutorial myself, but at the same time, I'm kind of taking apart their tutorial and you know, adding little details that could help. But I've already kind of gone through the survival shooter completely. Right now, I'm about ready to try to see whether or not I can actually cause this to be a problem. Oh, God damn it. Once again, this doesn't have this download. No. So it's kind of a little bit of both. Their tutorial, unfortunately, is not updated to their most recent version. So I've already kind of had some problems with their the fact that they're not showing any of the most recent aspects of it. You can look back at my other videos or my YouTube. I have all the previous parts there. I believe I've stated that this is what, part 6? Yeah, I can't remember. I think this is like part 6 of what I've done with it so far. So, so the previous 5 versions, I basically went through the first tutorials that they had on there and had some issues like the very first day, and then I've been basically working on their survival shooter tutorial here. But they've had some problems here and there along the way that I've encountered. Now this is a more up-to-date version than what I had when I first started out. So I believe in part 3 I had a crash on the main camera that I couldn't get past. So I re-downloaded the most recent version, did the steps correctly to get me back to where they were on their part 3 of the tutorial, and was able to kind of continue on with that. Right now, what my intention is to get back to that step 3 and see whether or not I can actually kind of recreate the crash. That's what I plan on doing right now. Have you used Unity before, or are you trying to get into Unity yourself? Damn it. President-in-Chief Solution Architect. But I worked just 1 year with games in 2009. Started studying it to create some personal indie project. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat a little bit, I guess. I'm just trying to expand on my skill set. I'm kind of a noob when it comes to programming in general. Trying to actually find some kind of job out there that will actually take me. It's been tough sometimes. So, but I'm just I know C and Java for the most part, but I want to try to learn more, and I figure the best solution for me is to try to look at other tools that other people have been using, such as Unity here, that also uses C#. So it gives me kind of a tutorial on multiple different languages, and Unity as an IDE, which others have been able to create multiple different games. So obviously it's worked for others. The fact that I'm having some interesting issues with their tutorials is fairly problematic here and there, but it's interesting. So mostly with Java and JS, know some Go, and stopped on very basic Rust. Okay. Yeah. I've had some odd jobs with Cold Fusion and what's the name of that one program? It was like it was. Oh gosh. So it's also table flipping for me. Yeah, okay. I can understand that, man. I mean, if you have some questions about the survival shooter, I mean, feel free to ask. I mean, I'm just going through their videos, seeing all the problems that they have with it, and trying to recreate the best that I can. I mean, you can look back through my old videos for that if you want. But like I said, once again, I'm just going to try to push through to this. Feel free to kind of follow along if you want. Bring up your own Unity project, and you can kind of see, or you can kind of follow along. See the difficulties that I'm having. So,
In the upper right, and choose 2 by 3.
I need to
So
kind
layout,
of go
drop
back a
down
little
and
bit
I-
here.
Eventually lose.
Yeah.
So that's the way we prefer to make them.
Ah,
So the very
thanks,
first
I
thing
appreciate that.
you'll notice is that on my screen I have the project open, We don't want you to have the project open at all. What we want you to do is to make your own new scene, and we're going to put this project together. So if anyone has got the scene open, we don't want you to do that. We want you to make a brand new scene. So first of all,
Yeah,
we're going to go to
I already did that
File,
one.
New Scene. Then what we want you guys to do, to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, we're going to ask you to set up the editor in the same style that we have. If you're comfortable with Unity, you've used Unity before, and you prefer to work in your layout of the editor, that's totally cool. You can keep that. But if you're new to Unity, what we'd like you to do is to choose the Layout menu in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. So Layout drop down in the upper right and choose 2 by 3. That will get you a style that looks something like this. Then what we'd like you to do is to drag the project panel and drop it below the hierarchy. You'll note when you drag the title tabs of the panels around, they will dock into different spaces. Drop that below the hierarchy, and then you can just drag up the division between those two. Maybe drag this over a little, and then you should be all set. So
Okay, I'm having some difficulties here because the assets haven't loaded in. Let me try to do this again. New scene. No. This is why I've been having some issues with this. Tutorial projects. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna close this out. Forget. Let's re-download this again. So yeah, this has been kind of an interesting experience for me. I've been trying to get this to kind of work according to how they have, and it's as you can as you said, it's kind of table flipping at times. But I mean, if you can kind of see what they're trying to do on the video, you can typically be able to work your way through the process. But oh boy, it's been interesting, that's for sure. At some point in time, I do want to try to do my own individual indie game. But my problem has always been trying to keep focused. So it's one of the aspects where it's like I've been trying to find myself a job that can actually handle that. You know, have someone that can kind of give me some kind of structure, some timeline, some type of thing. But that hasn't really happened. So now I'm just going to try to do this on my own, and hopefully the streaming will kind of push me towards doing that. So wish me luck. But for now, we're going to keep on kind of pushing forward on this. Like I said before, I'm going to try to get to that one error that I couldn't get through on like part 3 of my stream. You can probably see it on my YouTube channel. Okay, there we go. Much better. Let's get this back to... I think it was already in 2.3. It wasn't actually showing at 2.3, but whatever. Oh my gosh, come on. Get up there. Okay, so he said new scene. Bam. Then you set it to 2 by 3, and we continue.
So hopefully everyone's got a view like that. Then what I usually like to do is with the project panel, because we don't really need to use the thumbnails particularly, there's a slider at the bottom which will change to list view when dragged all the way over to the left.
And it definitely helps out.
So if we drag it over to the left, you're going to see exactly the same as what I have on my screen here. We are working with Unity 4.6, but right now what we'd like you to do is to go to File, Save Scene As, and we will ask you to put this into the Scenes folder. So we don't want you to use the completed asset.
Okay. As you if you're working on this yourself, you'll notice that there's saying scenes. There was no scenes in here, so we have to add our own folder into that. So, so save as scenes, and they're going to say level 1. So there you go.
Assets version of anything, just use the scenes folder that's in the root of the project, and we're going to call this level 01. So save it as level 01 in the scenes folder. When you've done that successfully, you should see the name of your scene up at the top of the interface. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is to set up the environment. So I'm just going to show you that first. So
question for you there, Hard. Are you using, which Unity version are you using? Are you using the latest that came out? I believe it's 3.11 or?
Prefab, just to reiterate how this stuff works, a prefab is our way of providing or saving a game object into the project. You can do that for a number of different reasons, and we'll be saving prefabs in order to spawn them into the game later with the enemies. But for the purpose of the environment, we prepared the model and a number of colliders and other elements. So if you look in the prefabs folder, you'll find a prefab called environment. Prefab's represented by this blue cube icon. All you need to do is to drag and drop that up into the hierarchy. So just to remind you, the hierarchy and the scene are intrinsically linked. Anything that's in the scene is therefore in the hierarchy and vice versa. Just make sure you've got a decent view of this level. You can use the hand tool, of course, up in the upper left, and use Control to zoom in and out, and Alt to rotate around. We don't need to worry too much about the view that you're looking at in the scene view, because we're going to set up the camera to look at a particular part of that later. What we're just going to check is that we've positioned the environment at the origin. So with the environment selected in the transform component, you should see the position is at 0, 0, 0. If it's not, just fill that in, 0, 0, 0, or go to the cog icon in the upper right and choose reset position. Then once we've done that, we're also going to drag in the lights prefab. Lights is in the prefabs folder. You simply need to drag that into the scene, and it should light your scene. With the lights, we don't need to worry about the positioning, particularly because it's directional lights. With directional lights, you only need to worry about the rotation. So if I just show you those briefly, you can see that these directional lights are pointing in certain rotations, and they're going to affect anything in the scene. You don't need to worry about where they're positioned. The way this game is going to work is that we're going to have a camera that's looking down on the scene. And what we need to do in order to track the player around and also to be able to shoot is to use something called a raycast, which is going to create an invisible line from the camera to the floor. But we've got a very inconsistent floor. We've got a number of different environment objects, such as these stool, the Lego bricks, the broken train, and all these different things. So we don't want to worry about raycasting onto those at different heights. So to make things a lot simpler, what we're doing is we're going to add in a plane quad. So what I'd like you guys to do is to go to Game Object, 3D Object, and Quad. What you'll notice is this creates a very small 1x1 quad right in the center of your game. We're going to reset that to 0, 0, 0 in the transform component. So make sure the position of your quad is at 0. And we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees in the x-axis. Finally, we want this to cover the entire game level. So we're going to scale this by 100 in X and 100 in Y. We're going to name this floor. So rename from quad to floor. So the next thing we're going to do is to make this invisible. Obviously, you'll notice that it looks pretty horrendous right now. We don't want to actually see this. What we want to do is use the collider, so the outline of this shape. We don't want to use this kind of gray for any reason whatsoever. So a quad is made visible by this mesh renderer component. And because we don't want that, we're just going to go ahead and remove it. So with the floor selected, click the cog to the right of the mesh renderer and choose Remove Component. So with your floor selected, go to the cog icon in the upper right, choose Remove Component, and you should see that you can then only see the collider outline.
Make sure you remove the mesh renderer, not the mesh filter or the mesh collider.
Yeah. Remember, you've got undo if anything goes horrendously wrong, but you should then see that you just have the collider around the outline of the level, something like that. Then, because we don't want our raycast to check for anything but this quad, we're going to use layers. So a layer is a way of isolating things like raycasting or lighting, for example, to a particular group. So with the floor selected, if you click the layer drop down, you should see that we have a floor layer ready for you. So choose from the layer drop down at the top of the inspector, floor.
Save early, save often.
And then save your scene. The next thing we're going to do is to finish up our environment by adding some background music. So with sound sources in Unity, we can attach them to any object. It's a component that you use to apply a clip to or use scripting to assign clips to. We're going to have a separate game object just to keep things separate and just to keep them nicely organized. So I'd like you to go to Game Object, Create Empty, and then rename this Background Music. So again, return on the Mac or F2 on the PC, just like your operating system, and rename this background music. So we're creating an empty and renaming it background music. Then we can add components to our game objects to make them do different things. So we have a component menu up at the top with a bunch of different categories of things that you can do to your game object to give it different behavior or different functionality. What we're going to add is an audio source. So we can use this component menu, or we can use the add component menu over on the right in the inspector. So because the inspector will show you properties of the game object currently selected, we can go into here and we want to add an audio source. We don't really want to hear the music for this game playing every time you press play in your game, but just to make sure that everyone's works, we are going to do it once. So to assign an audio clip to the audio source, we can use the circle select. We're going to refer to circle select a lot throughout the day. It's the small nipple-like icon to the right of the audio clip. And what that will do is pop up a context window, which is going to allow you to find the file you need. The file you need is background music, surprisingly enough, and simply closing that window will assign it to that. For everyone's sanity, uncheck play on awake. We also want the music to loop when we are finished with the day with the game. We do want it to loop. So uncheck play on awake and check loop. In the volume on the component, there is a slider, and we can just drag that down to about 0.1. So that's just to balance it with the other sound effects that we have in the game, and then you can go ahead and save your scene once more. That's the end of phase one, setting up the environment. The next thing we're going to do is look at our player character.
Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so we were able to get through that portion of this. Let's go and get the second portion done.
Which is going to get them moving and jazzing and bebopping and doing all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and locate the player model, which is going to be located in models folder, and we're going to expand that, and we're going to look in the characters folder, and we should see a player. There we go, player, should be right there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drag that either into the scene or into the hierarchy view. So just click and drag and drop, and there he is. And there he is. Looking pretty swaglicious. And so obviously if we just click and drag him into the scene, he might go wherever, so we need to place him at a specific spot. So we're going to ensure that the position is at 0, 0, 0. If it is, then you're golden. If it's not, go ahead and set it to 0, 0, 0. By typing 0, 0, 0, or again, we have this cog or gear icon, and you can just click reset or reset position, which will put it where we want it to be on the origin. Now, we need specific things to interact with the player in a very special way. And so we want to ensure that we've properly tagged our player so certain things will know when they've come in contact with the player. To do that, we have this tag dropdown here in the inspector, and currently says untagged. And what we're going to do is we are going to click that dropdown, and we are going to select player, thus tagging our player as the player so that the player will behave appropriately when they're playing, right? All right, fantastic. Now, what we need to do is we're going to go ahead and create an animation controller for our player, which is going to allow us to have all of the neat little animation effects of moving and turning and doing all that stuff. And I'm still zoomed in here. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and locate the animation folder, which we'll just click on right here. Currently it is in fact...
I am lagging something fierce here right at this moment in time. What is going on? Am I lagging on stream right at this moment? I know the my Chrome is lagging on the video itself, but I don't know whether or not I'm lagging. I'm hoping that's not the case. Let me know if you guys are having some issues trying to if there's some problems on my end or something along those lines. So I don't necessarily want to be a robot to everybody. But there doesn't seem to be anyone watching right at the moment, so I'm gonna have to assume that I'm okay right at the moment. So yeah, move on.
Empty.
Move on.
And we are going to make an animator controller.
Should we just talk a little bit about the animations that we've set up first?
What a great idea.
Cool. So the model that we've just dragged in is the player model, and what you can do is drag up the preview window in the lower right of the editor. So this model has been animated for you. So when you bring in an FBX into Unity or a Maya file or 3ds Max, whatever package you use, when you bring that in, you can store animations within it, or if you have a humanoid, a biped type model, you can retarget those animations onto similar type of models. This particular thing is rigged in what we call a generic manner. So if I look at my rig, you can see generic up at the top. And what that means is it's a very specific bone structure because our character is going to move like this. It's going to be kind of hopping around. So he's not got 2 arms, 2 legs, as a kind of biped would. So the animations that are stored in this particular game object, this model that we've given you, are a move, an idle, and a death. So what we're going to do now is to create a state machine called the animator controller to control when these 3 different animations are going to be played back.
If you're looking in the inspector here, I highly encourage you not to touch anything. Right? Because these changes change how Unity imports the stuff, and if you just start clicking, a little box comes up and it's like, would you like to apply? And you're like, yeah, apply for what? And then all of a sudden, your stuff is not going to work later. So just,
so we're doing
look
this
but don't touch.
just to show you where the animation is going to be coming from, and we're going to go ahead and actually implement it now.
All right, so we're going to go back to this animation folder, and again, it's still empty, so no magic there yet, right here. And we're going to go ahead and add what's called an animator controller. Animator controller.
Okay. Once again, assets doesn't actually have the animation folder in here, so you have to kind of go ahead and create the animation folder. So I'm going to do that right now.
Are part of the Mechanim animation system. They're basically a finite state machine that just blends animations and does all this neat stuff. It's actually magic. We hired wizards. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create this asset that's going to allow us to do that. So I'm going to right click here inside this, inside the animation folder in the project view here, and I am going to select create and then animator controller. Not animation, not animator override controller, but animator controller. And I'm going to get this name here, and I'm going to name it Player AC for Animator Controller. There we go. And so once we have that, what we're going to do is we are going to actually just click and drag that onto the player, which is going to apply this animator controller to the player. So I'm not going to put it under the player. I'm going to put it on the player, and you'll know the difference because player itself will become highlighted. And I'll let go.
And you can see right there.
I can confirm I did this correctly by clicking on the player, and I see here player AC is now listed in the animator component, player AC, right there. That's how I know I've done it correctly. All right.
Saver,
Now,
save
let's go ahead
button.
and look at this animator controller. Now that we have it created, and to do that, I can go to Window, and then select Animator. But easier yet is to see my player AC and just double-click on it, which is automatically going to open up the animator window. If it's not docked here, you can just dock it by clicking the tab, dragging it, and docking it into the window. So as we were looking at earlier, when Will clicked on the player FBX model, and we looked in the inspector and we saw all those animations and stuff that was baked into those settings, those actually create assets that we're able to use. So if I go back to the models characters folder right here, and again, look at my player.fbx. If I were to expand that, I would actually see the assets that make up this imported model. And so I'm going to go ahead and click this arrow here. And what I see is I see these 3 animations, death, idle, and move, right? So not only were the animations imported as part of the model, but we actually have them as assets that we can utilize. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to take each of these in turn and move them into my animator window. I'm just going to click and drag them and drop them. I'm just going in order here, so I'm just going to do death, idle, and move. The order's not really going to matter because we're going to reorder them in just a moment. So when you have this done right, you'll see that you have this any state, and then you have a death state, an idle state, and a move state. All right, and so we'll notice that the death state is orange, or whichever state you dragged in first is orange, right? Orange means it's the default state. Obviously, I do not want death as the default state. It's a sad game, but it's not that sad.
Hence the reason
And so
why I
what I
dragged
want to
idle
do
in
is
first.
I'm going to set a different state as our default state. So I'm going to right-click on idle, and I'm going to click set as default. And so that will then turn orange. And I can reorder just by clicking and dragging and moving things around. If you just happen to be very particular about how things look, you can start building yourself some geometric structures if you really feel like it, whatever. But anyway, so now we have idle as the default state. And so what we need to do is we need to tell the animator when we want to transition from one state to another state, right? So we've got these 3 states. We've got idle, we've got move, and we've got death. And they're self-contained animations. They can just play and all that stuff. But the logic of when we go from one to the next isn't currently in here, right? So what we need to do is we need to create something called a parameter, which is basically going to control when something happens, when something changes state. And we access those parameters right here with this little parameters button. It's very cleverly named. And we have this little plus icon right there. And what we want to do is we want to create a parameter. So the first parameter we're going to create, when we click this, we're going to see we have some options. We can create a float as in a floating point number, int as an integer, bool as in boolean, or trigger. We want to create a boolean, so bool, and we're going to call this is walking. It's very important that you spell it right, like I just did not. There we go, is walking, and then enter. It has to be capital I, lowercase s, capital W, walking. All right? It's important that it's spelled right because we have scripts that you're going to use that reference it by name. So if you
can
name it
use
something
your
else,
own
like Skeletor,
parameter names
when the
and
time
your own
comes,
scripts,
it's not going to work. You'll just have to open up. You're going to have to open up your code and actually change it, which you really don't want to do. So we have this is walking, which is a Boolean, which means it can be either true or false, and that true or false will dictate whether he is walking. I'm going to create another one now. So again, I'm going to click this little plus icon, and I'm going to select this time a trigger. And a trigger is like a Boolean. It can have a state true or false. But unlike a Boolean, the moment we set it to true, it sets it back to false, right? Which is useful when I just want to like trigger something to happen one time, and then it resets itself, right? So we're going to select a trigger here, and this trigger is going to be called, you ready for this? Die.
Yeah.
We listened to a lot of heavy metal while making this. And so die is a trigger that's going to be triggered when the player actually dies. All right, so now what we want to do is, so we have these parameters, which is, great, but now we need to tell Mechanim in the animator specifically how to use those parameters. We need to set up some logic to move us from one to the next. Oh, you're reordering my stuff.
And we're reordering it wrong as well.
All right, so what we want to do is we want to set up transitions, all right, that basically says, hey, this state is capable of going to that state, right? And this state is capable of going to that state. We set up these transitions explicitly so that we can't accidentally transition from, say, like dead to jump, right? Because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what we want to do is we want to create these transitions, which basically are one-way bridges that define logically how we go from one state to another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on idle, and I'm going to select Make Transition. And when I click Make Transition, I get this cool little rodeo lasso thingy, which is actually just kind of fun to play with by itself. But we're here for business. So what I'm going to do is, once I've confirmed that there's this white line attached to my mouse, I'm going to move my mouse over the Move Animator state, and I'm just going to click, and it's going to connect the two. So now what we have is we have a transition from idle to move. Yep, see, there you go. In case you didn't believe me. And so this is basically saying that we can go from idle to move. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, in order to actually dictate when that happens, I have to click on the transition. So I'm going to get real close here. Too close. Too close. There we go. And I'm going to click, and you're going to see it turn blue. All right, and so now I have selected the transition between the two. And once I've done that, over in the inspector view, we get the properties of this transition. And what I'm interested in is down at the bottom, we have these conditions. What is the condition of this transition, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little drop down right now that says exit time, and I'm going to select is walking, and I'm going to leave that as true. So the way you read this is we are transitioning from idle to move when is walking equals true. Right, cool. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of do the exact opposite. So I'm going to right-click on Move, make transition, get my fun little rodeo arrow. Now I'm going to click on idle. So this is stating that I am able to move from the move state back to the idle state. And I'm sure you can all guess what the condition for that's going to be, but we'll go through it anyway. I'm going to select conditions, is walking equals false. So if the player is walking, we play the walking animation. If the player is not walking, we don't. We play the idle animation. All right, finally, what I want to do is I am going to create one more transition. This time, we want the player to be able to die. And so to do that, we're not going to transition from idle or move or death, because we can theoretically die in any state, depending on whichever animation is currently going on. So we are going to use the any state. All right? And by that, I mean the actual green any state. I don't mean you're going to transition from just any state you want. All right? So the one that actually says any state. And so I'm going to right-click on that, and I only have one option, and that's Make Transition. And I'm going to transition from any state to death. So no matter what state you're currently in, if you die, you die. I'm going to select that transition. You'll see it turn blue. And I'm going to set my condition to be die. Now, since it's a trigger, I don't need to specify true, false, value, or anything like that. It's just if die gets triggered, we immediately switch into the death animation.
The next thing we need to do with this player character is to give him a physical presence in the scene. So if you change from your animator window back to the scene view using the tab at the top, then you can select the player. We're going to add rigid body. A rigid body component is something that allows the physics engine of Unity to be applied to the object. So we are going to click Add Component and choose Physics and Rigid Body.
It's important that you don't select Physics 2D, Rigid Body 2D. We're doing 3D physics, so just physics.
Cool. So then what we're going to do, because we don't want this to kind of slow down over time, we're going to set the drag and angular drag to infinity. So you can do this actually by just typing INF in the drag box and hitting return. If you've done it correctly, you'll see a capitalized infinity. We do want to use gravity. We want to keep the player firmly grounded, despite this being a dream sequence. And we do want to use constraints. So basically, we're going to use constraints to ensure that the player character doesn't fall forward or fall over any different direction. And we also want to freeze the Y position so that he doesn't sink through the floor or jump up or anything like that. So in freeze position, we're going to choose the Y coordinate and freeze rotation X and Z or Z.
You'll have to expand constraints if it's not currently expanded.
Yeah, sorry. You need to expand constraints. If you can't see those properties, you should see them at the bottom.
Next, we need to make sure things can actually bump into the character, because currently he reacts to physics. But if he doesn't bump into anything, nothing's going to happen. So if you go to add component, and then physics, and then there's a capsule collider along with all the other colliders there. And we need to give it specific settings so we make sure that the capsule covers the player. So if you change the center to 0.2 in the X, 0.6 in Y, and leave the Z as 0, or Z as 0, sorry. And we also need to change the height to 1.2. So what that's going to mean is that this sort of leaning over character thing here, he's got a little bit of an X offset, so the capsule is going to cover him nicely. So next, we need the player to make a little yelping sound when he gets hurt. So we're going to add an audio source component. So if you go to add component audio, and then find audio source, and we're going to change the audio clip from none using the little circle select by it to player hurt. So when it opens the context sensitive menu,
awake, don't need
you can
to
see
do loop.
player hurt there.
One thing about the selection window is that you can double click to close it at the same time. If you want to assign something, you can open up the circle select, double click will also close the window. One other thing I'm going to quickly do, because we've got these settings done, is I'm going to close the rigid body or collapse it up using the arrow next to it, just so that we can see the ones below it.
We do not want the player to make a yelp sound on awake, so we're going to uncheck play on awake. You'll know that if you haven't unchecked that, when you start the game it'll go, oh. If it does that, go back to this and uncheck play on awake. Right, so we're going to find the player movement script, and that's in the scripts player folder. So if you look in the project panel, find scripts, expand that, and then click on player, you'll see on the right hand side the different player scripts that we've got. And we've got an empty class called player movement, and we're going to go through making that now.
Okay, so you can assign a script a number of different ways. So a script is just a component like any other component. But what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop for this one. So I'm going to grab my player movement script, I'm going to drag it up and drop it onto the player game object. When that's done, you should see that it appears as a component at the bottom of the list.
Be sure to save your scene before we go on to this next part too, because we're on a beta software.
So first of all, double click it for opening, and
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip this part, obviously, or, go to the end of it, because, I mean, I've already kind of seen this fully before. See. Or at least try to get it to a point where I can actually kind of see it all. Well, might as well get the Alright. So I'm just going to type all this up here real quick there, folks. So give me a second while I type all this in. Once again, this probably would have been this portion is easier if you have the Visual Studio, but I don't have it, so I gotta make do. Cast hit, floor hit. Now, if you look down in the comments section during these videos, you can see that I don't think that's the right spelling for it. You can see that people have kind of said, "Hey, wait, you know, this isn't correct." You know, you need to kind of use this version and you know, make sure that you kind of follow along with that, because you know, they've most likely made changes since they released this video. So it's Camry. Okay. Mass, transform, position. Ah, damn it. Get that back there. Like, for example, this right here, the Quaterion, I believe they mentioned that this isn't really used all that much, so I'm just using it for this tutorial, and that's about it. So just trying to do this fairly quickly so I don't have to bore you guys with the details, but I mean, if I was to edit this down, then this is the portion that I would probably do it, because I mean, if you've seen the previous versions, you know, you'd already know you'd already know, you know, that if you go back through my previous tutorial videos, the previous videos that I've done on my YouTube channel, you'll see that, you know, I've already kind of gone through this already, so you don't necessarily need to go through it again. So need to make sure that I got everything kind of set up correctly. Oh, that is a plus sign. There we go. Okay, so up here we got a fixed update. You can kind of see I believe at this point in time I was like, well, why are they doing it this way when they could do it the other way, or something along those lines. I believe it's been a while since I did those videos, so yeah. Let's see. Wait. Just getting through all this so that we can move on to the next portion. I don't want to, like, you know, bother redoing all the sound and all that kind of stuff, so just want to try to get this done as quickly as I can. Oh, let's see. Oh no, this is where they were kind of describing the horizontal and whatnot. Okay, there it is. So probably should have taken care of this above first, seeing that I reuse these over and over again, but okay, that's all done. So let's go ahead and move forward a little bit. Okay, let's see. In fixed update, they have the move. B. They have turning. They have animating. And HV. Save that. Let's see. Wake is fine. Move is fine. Let's go back a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
But we want to use walking, the variable that we just made.
So the very last thing that we need to do in this function, in this class, is we need to put calls to those functions that we've made. Currently, they're just functions sitting there by themselves. we need to make sure that those functions are actually being called and actually being used.
These 3 functions aren't happening until we tell them to. We haven't actually called them anywhere in the script. They just exist and are waiting to happen.
In fixed update that we created earlier, we already got the input. We stored that. Now, after we've got the input, we now need to call these functions that we've created. So we call them just by using their name and then passing in the values if they're required.
So move requires 2 floats. We've got our floats for input there, and that's all that we need to do. So we need to say H and V semicolon. Then we'll call turning, which doesn't take any parameters. And finally we'll call animating, which does. Like that. These are in fixed update, so they're being called every physics step. So that is the end of that script. So what I want you to do now is to go to File Save and switch back to Unity. If anything's wrong, you'll see an error at the bottom of the screen in red. When you have no errors in your script, when you press play at the top of the editor, you can move your character around with the arrow keys or W, A, S, and D. The animation should function, but the actual movement of the mouse should be a little bit tricky right now because we haven't moved the camera to the right point. So the camera isn't seeing the entirety of the floor quad yet, and that can be a problem, but we're going to solve that in the next phase. So you should be able to move around. You know, if I move the mouse up away from the floor quad, then it doesn't rotate. As soon as I move it back over there, the raycast kicks back in and I can turn around and run around like this. Okay, so we're at the end of phase 2. Phase 3 will be just very quickly setting up the camera, and we're going to have a quick look at the script that will make that camera work.
Okay, so we're getting back to the point where I had some issues with the main camera. Now, in this particular instance, they're going to reference a point where if you don't name your file correctly for the C#, you're going to have some issues. That's what I initially did, thinking that it will eventually correct itself if you rename it again. It didn't, however. So we're going to see whether or not if that's the case, that happens again with this particular version. If it doesn't happen, or if it can't correct from that mistake that a programmer does, then I will once again send this particular video clip back to them and say, well, heck, I'm already having to send this back to them already with the fact that I can't even download the very latest version. But I'm going to see whether or not if I'm going to be able to actually recreate the problems that I had with the main camera. If it corrects itself, then they're good. You know, I'm happy that my input might have pushed to them updating their software. If it doesn't, then maybe I'll have to kind of come back to this at some point in time and recheck to see whether or not the latest version has done that. I don't really know. I don't have the latest version, so we're going to basically continue moving forward here. So let's see. Yeah, camera.
Okay, so as we said before, some of the scripts in this project are pre-written. So the main camera is the camera that we're viewing our game at. If I zoom out right now, you can see that the main camera is sitting behind the character. And what we want to do is to set that up slightly differently. Currently, by default, when you make a new camera in Unity, you're making a perspective 3D camera. We want to make an isometric view, and because of that, we're going to use orthographic cameras. So the first thing we're going to do is to set up where the camera is positioned. We're going to select our main camera in the hierarchy, and in the transform component, we're going to set the position to 1, 15, minus 22. We're going to set the rotation to 30, 0, 0. Then in the camera component, we're going to set the projection mode from perspective using the drop-down to orthographic. And finally, the size value that then appears to 4.5. And when you look at your scene view, your game view, you should see that you have an orthographic view. Then a couple more camera settings. We're going to set our background to black. So when you move over to the front of the level, you'll see the background color of the camera. We don't want it to be blue. So in our camera component, we're going to click on the color block next to the word background. That's going to open up a color picker, which looks like this. We're going to set this to black, so drag it all the way down to the bottom of the colors and close that panel. Then we're going to save our scene just to make sure it's up to date. And in the scripts folder, we're going to select camera. So this time we are going to create one more script. This script.
Okay. Once again, there's no camera script here, so I'm going to go ahead and create the camera folder. Now this is where it starts getting to be the problematic portion. So their scripts is empty under the cameras. They don't have any kind of script file or whatnot. So this is where I hit that wall. So let's see if we can actually recreate it.
Script is a lot shorter than our player movement and quite simple. So whenever you select a folder in your assets, so for example, we are selecting camera in the scripts folder right now, we can go to the create button and choose C# script. And it's going to create something called new behavior script. When you create a script, especially in C#, it's very important that you name it accurately. We're going to call this camera follow. So don't have any spaces in your file names for scripts, and try to name them in this capitalized style, capital C, capital F, camera follow.
Quick note on creating scripts like this. If you created it and then accidentally clicked off so it was briefly new behavior, then the class that it makes will be called new behavior.
Yes.
So you'll need to rename that when you open it.
So if I look at this one that I've correctly named now camera follow, you can see that it's written into the script for me.
Okay, so I clicked off of it. It creates the new behavior script. And I was like going, oh, wait, I gotta change this back to camera follows. So rename camera follow. Okay, now bear in mind, okay, right now the script right now is still showing the new behavior script right here, and it's saying no mono behavior scripts in this file, even though it's referencing mono behavior in here. Okay, but because of the naming change, it caused this kind of issue. Now, once we open it up, I can change this back to the file name that it should be, and save that, and it changes there, but it didn't used to change up there. So I'm hoping that that was the fix. So let's
Public class camera follow. And what you'll see is that when you open it up in Unity and switch back, Unity will say class name does not match file name. So you need to make sure that everything in that class is named the same as the actual file, your camera follow script. So once you've named that, click open to open it up in MonoDevelop. And you should see something like this.
Okay.
What we're going to do.
Now I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit here, seeing that I've already done this before. So I'm just going to kind of move forward on their script process here, and recreate it here, and then we'll see whether or not it actually errors out again or not. Hopefully it doesn't, but we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that my input into their error here has, you know, this version that they have, the 6F1 is was their version to try to fix the issue prior. So we'll see what happens, because I was using 3 something before, you know, had the issue. So I'm kind of hoping that they fixed it in this most recent version, or recent-ish version. And then I'll move forward some more just to see whether or not it actually does fix the issue or not. So bear with me as I copy the text. Again, based off of the comments in the video itself, they were talking about the lerp being not needed. So, you know, I would suggest that you take a look at the comment section for this video to see what they were talking about and make the adjustments accordingly. But like I said, I'm trying to follow their tutorial to a T, so here we are. Everything's been updated and whatnot, so we should be good.
Very simple.
So, for those of you who are ready, what I want you to do is in the Unity editor, select camera follow and drag and drop this onto main camera. So from the project panel, drop it onto main camera. When you've done that, and select main camera in the hierarchy, so you should see this camera follow script that I have in the lower right. You'll see that the public variables target and smoothing appear as things that we can assign to in the interface. So target is looking for something called a transform, and smoothing is a number that we can change to whatever we want. Then what we're going to do is to assign the target. The target, of course, is the player, so we just drag and drop player onto the target variable.
Grab the player from the hierarchy and not the scene view. Clicking and dragging the player in the scene view is just going to move.
Okay. So, if I remember correctly, based off of the previous, my previous videos on this, they corrected the issue. Because if I remember correctly, when I did the drag and drop onto main camera from the camera follow, it had an issue. It could not, it would not allow me to actually drag and drop onto it. So, good going, guys. I appreciate the fact that this has fixed the issue of, you know, having the incorrect naming convention and whatnot. So, so bravo on that. I appreciate the fact that you guys fixed that issue, because that was, you know, I had spent what, a couple hours easy trying to figure out some way of actually getting past that particular wall, but there you go. It looks like they resolved the issue. So I wasn't able to get to that whole player transform because the whole drag and drop of the script onto main camera itself was the one that was causing the issue. It was saying something along the lines of it wasn't part of the mono what was it, mono behavior. I'm like going, it's right there, guys. What the hell? You know, the target was talking about how the fact that it wasn't part of the mono behavior. I did everything that I could try to figure out to try to resolve that particular issue, and it looks like they were able to do that for this particular version. So I appreciate that, guys. It makes my life a little bit easier. Um, looks, I appreciate the fact that you guys are um, kind of watching what I do and able to try to fix um, everything kind of behind the scenes right at the moment. Obviously, you guys are still having some issues here and there. That's fine. It happens. Um, like I said, I'll be posting some trouble that I had about the whole download aspect, but right at this point in time, great work. Appreciate it. Okay, so I am officially done with the survivor shooter process. This is um, I have no intention of like trying to expand on this particular asset, you know, because all the art and all the assets technically are not mine. I don't want to cause any kind of problems with um, using any of this in the future, um, or anything along those lines. I mean, at some point in time, I do intend to want to, create something that will eventually make me some money, maybe, cross my fingers. Um, but uh, I'm not going to be using this particular tutorial version at all. Um, so yeah. Okay, so we are pretty much done. Yeah, we are done with the survival shooter aspect. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this down. I don't really need to keep it, so I can close those down. Don't really need those. Let's go ahead and bring back the hub. Or actually, let's see. Um, yeah. Okay, I'll go ahead and get rid of that. Out of sample projects. Don't really need it. Okay. Once again, we're back to Unity Hub. Um, uh, I've already done these four, as you can probably tell, from just go to my YouTube channel. You'll see all four of these done. Um, I tried doing the 3D game kit. Um, that didn't really work. So, let's once again try to download the release here. Maybe it was a matter of their server was offline. Maybe I don't really know. We'll see. If I get the same exact error, um, I don't necessarily want to start another project using an older version. So we're gonna see whether or not it will update the most recent version on this, and then we'll move on. Um, so uh, the maybe I'll try the 3D kit. Um uh, After I'll try the 3D kit after the once this is done downloading, if it gets done downloading, and then I'll see about checking out the 3D kit and seeing what happens. So this is looking like it's going all the way through, so I'm kind of happy about that. Looks like it was more of a maybe their server was down or offline or whatnot. So okay, so that's great that you know this can actually. It was just a matter of a problem with the install, so or it was a problem with most likely their download page. Who knows? Maybe they were actually watching me. If so, how's it going, guys? Um, so let's see. It's taking its time for the install, but then again, I got a lot of processes going right at this moment in time, so not too surprising. So I'll try the 3D kit, see whether or not that actually downloads. That was one of the problems that I had prior. We'll see if that goes on through. Then I'm thinking about trying the 2D kit and seeing if I can actually create something in a 2D style. Now, I'm not an artist, so I'm going to be kind of the idea of trying to use 3D assets and whatnot. I would have to actually borrow pre-built 3D assets in order to actually even consider a 3D game. And even then, the idea of creating something like that for someone like myself that's still fairly new to the whole, gaming gaming world and whatnot. Well, I mean, in game coding, I should say. It's something that I don't necessarily want to tackle as an individual. I mean, some people have, and it's more power to them. I want to try to start fairly easy with trying to get the basics down first. You know, um, figure out camera, figure out mouse movement, keyboard movement, so on and so forth. I'd rather kind of focus on that first before I start going into the 3D world. So 2D is the next best thing for that. Install is taking its time. Let's so there's kind of wish that the hub could actually kind of allow to be expanded, but oh, hello, what's this? Are you still installing? Yeah, you're still installing. Okay. Okay, so I don't know whether or not I want. I mean, I'll I'll download the game kits, but I think what I'm more interested in doing at some point in time is doing this 2D roguelike, and seeing what the tutorial is for that. I'll look into these, see whether or not I can kind of do anything with them for the time being. but I'm most likely interested in the whole 2D roguelike because that is the the 2D games is something that I'm probably going to be a little bit more comfortable with. Um, I can ask people to just kind of create me sprites, art-wise, and try to work on it that way. So, um, so we'll see what we can do there. Um, hmm. I may look into this as well, seeing that I don't really have a um, into. I'm not well versed in C sharp, so I'm gonna see maybe learn about this process here. Uh, Maybe even do this one here, working in 2D to check out the links. So we'll see what we can do there. You're still installing. If I do, maybe I can. Well, I want to be careful because I've had some issues before with trying to download two things at the same time. So using their Unity hub and whatnot. So well, let me at least download them. I'll download one at a time there so that everything um, kind of works out for the most part. So, we'll see what we can do here. Now, let's see. Now, I did the survival shooter. Let's go ahead and check out the roguelike. Ooh, taking its time. Uh, let's see what they have there. Oof, it is chugging along. Hopefully my stream is handling it okay. Okay, so that got done downloading. This is still installing. So let's go ahead and download that one. Wait, what? Can I get the package site? Okay, what's going on here? Hold on a second there, folks. Okay, I should be fine on gigabytes. Currently not connected to a network. What the heck is going on here? Okay. This is saying that my stream is still going here, but uh, all of my other processes is kind of causing some problems. Okay.
Welcome to the Scavengers Project video series. Before
Okay. Okay, so this one is a little bit older than their survival shooter, but not by much. So I'm probably going to be seeing some additional problems from here to there. So, but we'll see what we can do on this. Now, I'm going to hold off on this for right now because I still kind of want to make sure that I get everything kind of downloaded here and installed before I move on to the next project. Uh, the likelihood of me actually doing it by the end of my stream, probably not going to happen. We'll see what happens. We'll see what I can do. But I do want to try to get this fully installed first before I really kind of explore onto the next one, because you know, as I kind of shown, you know, they had to kind of do some updates to their program in order to kind of correct some of the issues that I was facing. So yeah. So far it's looking pretty good in the sense that I was able to actually get the 3D game kit and 2D game kit downloaded. That's a little bit better than the last time that I tried. But this is taking its time. I don't know what to kind of do with that right at the moment. Okay, so I'm probably gonna go ahead and end the stream right here there, folks, because I want this to kind of be fully installed before I move on to the next portion of the tutorials. You know, download the 0.11 and have it completely installed before I really move on to the next portion of the tutorial projects. So with that in mind, I don't necessarily want to be, you know, well, it'd be kind of nice if someone was in the chat and I could kind of talk with them about, you know, what they kind of want to see, if there was like something portion of the shooter that that they kind of want me to kind of maybe go over or something along those lines. If you have any kind of questions, you know, just let me know. I can see about trying to answer them, whether or not it's in the chat or the comment section. Either way. But I think I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I'm gonna wait. I'm just gonna let this kind of go into the background, finish its install, and it's probably gonna be next week when I start this up with the point 11. So, um, so yeah, I think that's about as much as I can really do right at this point in time. So, um, I don't want to be having you guys wait for this to finish it to install. So, and with no viewers right at this moment in time, that's where I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. So, all my videos go onto my YouTube channel. They're all unedited. I don't really bother with editing, so go to my YouTube channel. You'll find playlists with, you know, with the Unity program that I've done and the various games that I play during the week. If there's, if you guys have any kind of questions, you can leave them on the videos themselves, you know, in the comment section, or you can reach me through Twitter, Discord, or my Patreon. All those are available. Hey, look, it just finished. Oh, darn it. Nah, I'm gonna go and call it. It's, you know, normally I shut this down by 8 p.m. So, there's like 25 minutes, and while I might be able to kind of get through some of the roguelike, I didn't necessarily want to start that off first. So, but like I said, I have Twitter, the Patreon, or my Discord channel. Feel free to sign up for any of them if you want. You have no obligation to. Um, Obviously. um, Even though I would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, leave a comment if you have any kind of questions or anything along those lines. And I'll most likely be putting up a poll on my Twitter account about the game that I plan on showcasing this next week. So if there's anything that you guys kind of want to see, let me know. If there's something that you guys kind of want to see with the Unity, you know, what I do with the Learn here with the tutorial projects, let me know. I mean, I would, you know, if you want to see more of the 3D game kit versus the 2D game kit, let me know. Do you want me to go straight into the 2D roguelike? All that kind of stuff. So, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night. So thank you for kind of sticking around, saying hi, appreciating all the comments that you guys kind of gave to me, and all the interactions. I hope you guys kind of stick around and continue joining me as I continue boosting up my following. So yeah, thank you again there, folks. Appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Take care, strangers.